So for people joining, we're already streaming live to YouTube right now. We're going to start officially in about a minute on the hour. So please hang on and start looking at the doc and getting questions prepared. All right, so welcome to the kickoff for the next GitLab release. It's GitLab 11.0. So obviously a really, really big release because we hit the big 1.1, and it's going to be released on June 22nd. So that's not very far away. So we're really, really excited to talk about some of the really, really awesome features that we're planning to ship towards the end of June. So pretty much in our first half of 2018. So really, really big milestone that we're hitting all the way now in 2018. So without further ado, let's dig right into it. If you're looking at the Google Doc, you should do so. If you're not looking at it, you should do so. It's in the calendar agenda. And the first area is we're going to talk about is discussion. And so this one's a little hard to describe, the first feature. So please do go ahead and click it and to see the screenshot there, the mock-up that Pedro has created for us. But we're basically going to have different views for the Epic roadmap. So you're going to have a week view, a month view, and a quarter view. So essentially being able to see different granularity for your epics in GitLab, and it will even save the choice that you've made so that every time you go back, if you really like that quarter view, because you like to look things at a quarter, you're working at a more management level position, you'll get that every time. But if, say, you're more of an individual contributor in your particular organization, then you can always save the week view so you can really drill down on the particular work that you're focused on. And with many of these features, with epics and roadmap, GitLab ourselves, we're really going to heavily rely on this. So I'm really excited to show this off so that in addition to our great direction page, which we tell people what features we're using, and the kickoff here will have the roadmap view as well. And so that's something that I'm sure that we'll be able to include in future kickoffs as well. Assigning board with issue board with assigning column, is our second feature I wanted to highlight here. And essentially, in addition to label columns inside issue board, we're going to have assigning columns so that you can have a particular column that says Victor Wu, so that all issues assigned to myself will appear in that column. And so we, in talking with some of our engineering managers and other managers at GitLab, we found that this would be a great feature to help folks do assigning and essentially project management and have visibility into what particular issues that individuals are working on in a given milestone. Always on approvals is something we wanted to push for a long time now, and we're excited to be able to work on it in 11.0. Provides the ability for users to learn more about approvals more directly. So instead of having to go to the settings and turn on approvals will just be on all the time. And so, but we're very aware and cognizant of the fact that some people maybe don't want to use approvals, or we don't want to be blocking users from opening merge requests and merging them right away. So by default, the required number of approvals will be 0 for any project you create. But the UI will lend itself to make it very easy to add to that right away. And so if you wanted to use approvals, you can do so right away. It's not a separate setting that you have to configure. Weights is something that we've been have a feature in GitLab for a long time now, having weights inside issues. So if you're using Agile, Scrum, you might use user stories and have story points associated with your stories. So that's something that's weights allows you to do. We chose to call them weights to be a little bit more generic, but essentially you can think of them as story points. And in the past, we've allowed you to enter a number between 1 and 9. And with this feature, we're going to make that more flexible, open that number to a wider variety, essentially from 0 or none, 0 and up to infinity, and giving you a lot more flexibility to implement a variety of schemes, be that Fibonacci or other schemes that a lot of these agile methodologies or agile-based methodologies used. So we're really excited that we're going to support that and we're going to be able to use it ourselves. The rest of the features there I'll go quickly through, essentially some UI improvements to make your life a little bit easier. When you're scanning through issues and merge requests, a lot of times there's a lot of system notes, and maybe you just want to look at the comments and not care about the other system notes. You can do so after we implement this feature by a simple filter toggle. Modal view for a merge request file nav. So the drop-down file nav might not be as useful if you have a lot of changes in your merge request. We want to improve that experience. Same with sticky file path for merge request diff. We want to improve your experience of reviewing the merge request as you scroll through those really, really long diffs. Group system notes for multiple successive description edits. That's a mouthful. Essentially, right now, as you update a description in your issue or merge request, say 10 times, you see 10 system notes. That's a little bit silly. So we really wanted to clean that up. So if you update it 10 times, like I do, because I'm afraid that I might lose the edits, so I'll quickly save and continue editing, you'll just have one system note grouping them all together. So it's a little bit saner experience as you review the thread. And then some, of course, some API updates as well, letter J and letter I, which are skipped. Again, those are some subgroup updates that we've been knocking out with every release, and we're going to continue to do so in 11.0. Fabio, you're up.
Thank you, Victor. It seems that 11.0 will be the best release ever with this.
You're right.
Awesome. Yeah. And so it's also time. It's time for Auto DevOps to become generally available. So we started a very long time ago in 10.0, if I remember correctly, to develop Auto DevOps features. It has been beta since now, but now we feel that it's mature enough and that we are ready to make it available for production use. This includes that we still have to work on a few small things that will make us more comfortable in that. So in 11.0, you can find some of the improvements that we want to ship for Auto DevOps. Just to mention something, you can access the full list looking at the document and going to epics and issues that are linked from there. I want to mention that we want to improve the deploy token interactions. So we have now deploy tokens that will allow users that have private or internal projects to have consistent deployments on Kubernetes. And this flow can fit with Auto DevOps, but it's not yet fully integrated. So we will work to make it very, very easy and automatically done. So users in the real idea of the Auto DevOps have to do nothing, and they will find out of the box their deployments to be very stable also for private projects. Then also we want to automatically stop the Auto DevOps pipelines if they are failing at the very beginning, because we want to enable Auto DevOps for everyone, and we want that everyone will try Auto DevOps, but we can also understand that if your project really doesn't fit with Auto DevOps for many different reasons, you don't want to waste your resources and our resources if you are using GitLab.com, having a lot of failed pipelines. So Auto DevOps will try to do for you your pipeline. If it succeeds, perfect. You can get the final results there. If it's not, it will stop Auto DevOps and will notify the user of what is happening, so that an automatic pipeline has been tried. And so people can be aware of that and can try to fix it, can be interested in Auto DevOps, change the code, and then enable it again. We are also working on a lot of UX and visibility issues that have been brought during these months in order to ensure that the flow for our customers and our users is the best possible. For this specific task, a very big thanks to the UX team, our UX team, that worked a lot to figure out which could be the best approach for our customers to integrate and to use Auto DevOps. We are also shipping something that is not actually a product feature, but it's very, very important. So I want to mention it here. That is a full end-to-end testing of Auto DevOps and the Kubernetes integration using GitLab QA. So this is, I hope, the first one of a long series of end-to-end testing that we want to do to ensure that all the features, all the big features like Auto DevOps that are constantly changing every release will be tested all the time, and there are very few chances that something can be missed. Let's move then on the second point for CI/CD. Create an application control panel for easy configuration of app behavior. This is slightly related to Auto DevOps. The idea is that we have the Auto DevOps template, but users that want to customize the flow in some way at the moment have to make it explicit, losing the Auto DevOps magic, or they have to use variables and set them directly in the project settings. We want to make this experience even better, providing a set of slides and in a page where customers and users can set which is the intended behavior. This will drive the Auto DevOps template, the implicit one, giving the right approach, giving the right configuration to the pipeline. So for example, users will be able to define if they want to use a continuous deployment approach, or if they prefer to use staging and then a manual deployment to production. Or even better, if they want to use incremental rollouts. This will be very easy and driven in the UI. Next point is about incremental rollouts manual. We are shipping the first iteration of incremental rollouts in 10.8, sorry, but we are continuing in 11.0 with the second iteration on it. So we can see in the deploy boards the status of our incremental rollouts. And this is very important if you want to follow the flow and you want to see which is the actual status of your production environment. We also are improving the syntax for a variable expression, adding the regex operator. This improvement is very, very requested and very, very important because will allow you to set up the only and accept keywords in your GitLab CI YAML file to match and to create a job only if a regex is matched against the variables. This will allow you, for example, to match against the GitLab features variable and enable security products jobs only if they are enabled in your instance. This is something very, very useful to avoid wasting resources. And that's all for CI/CD. You can find the link to the issue board in the document if you want to access the full list of all the other things that we are working on in 11.2. Talking about security products, we are moving on license management. So the first iteration will be shipped in 10.8. In 11.0, we are continuing the story, implementing the approvals and blacklisting of the licenses. So users, instead of just seeing the list of the licenses that are part of the project or the dependencies of the project, will be able to set which are the licenses that they want to accept for their project and which are the licenses that don't want to accept, for example, for incompatibilities with the license they want to enforce. And this will be available as part of the UI. We also want to enrich our SAST report with more metadata. A feedback that we have from customers and prospects and users is that security features are very cool. The reports are quite good, but they are still having less information than what is needed. So the information that you can access now doesn't give you all the data, all the insights that people may want to address their security concerns. So we are adding more and more information to the report so people can see, for example, the severity or additional information about the exact location of the problem. This will be available in the UI as well. And the last point for security products is CI view for code quality. Code quality is a feature that we started working on a very long time ago, but we want to give it another shot, and we want to provide the full code quality report at the pipeline level. At the moment, you can access the differences at the merge request level, so what you improved and what you degraded from the previous state. with the CI view for code quality, you will be able at the pipeline level to see the full report. This means that if you want to know the status of your master branch, for example, you can go to your last pipeline for master, and you can find out all the list of items that are concerning your code, the quality of your code. And that's all for security products. Now, Jeremy, what about platform?
Thanks a lot, Fabio. Great to see security testing continue to improve, and I can't wait to see Auto DevOps generally available in June. This really is going to be the greatest release ever. So with 11.0 on the way, I've got a ton of great additions to share from the platform team. James Ramsey is usually here as well, but he's currently out of the office and enjoying some well-deserved vacation, so I'm representing his additions as well. But before we dig into those product additions, I wanted to touch on 2 deprecations that we're taking this major release to handle. The first is a removal of API v3. Hopefully this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. We promoted API v4 since GitLab 9.0, I believe, and we've been discussing communicating this change for some while. It's finally happening, and we're taking 11.0 to finally say our goodbyes to API v3. So that's going to happen. Next, we're also beginning a deprecation of DSA key support for SSH authentication. So OpenSSH has dropped default support for it due to a weakness in the algorithm, and we'd like to start winding down our support for these keys as well. As a first step, we'll allow existing DSA keys to remain and be used, but we'd like to begin preventing new DSA keys from being added as a first step. If you have a self-hosted instance, you'll still be able to use these keys based off of a server setting, but we'd like to go ahead and default behavior to prevent these any new DSA keys from being added. So those are the 2 deprecations that I kind of wanted to talk about. But now I wanted to kind of talk about some of the additions and the exciting stuff that we're adding. We're improving how we calculate paid seats in a way that makes sense for both GitLab and for our users. Feedback that we've heard from users is that the current model can sometimes make it challenging to add additional users to GitLab, especially at higher paid tiers. We hear that, and we're taking a step to help with this by not counting guest users against a license limit for Ultimate plans. So now, if you're on an Ultimate plan, feel free to add an unlimited number of guest users to your instance, and they won't count against your license limit. And we're really excited about this change, and we really hope that this helps our subscribers kind of get the most out of their plans and really leverage GitLab to its full effectiveness. Another change that I'm really excited about is making SAML SSO generally available for GitLab.com. So we've been working on this for some time, and 11.0 for Silver and Gold plans, we'd like to make this generally available. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, so I'll save the long lecture. But this feature is going to power up groups by allowing you to connect your GitLab.com group with an identity provider, making registration and user management super, super easy for our hosted offering. For this first iteration, we're going to still require group owners and masters to manually remove members from groups once their work has been done. But we'll add this in a future iteration along with forced SSO and a host of other plan improvements for group level SAML. This has been a huge need that we've heard from our customers, especially for .com, and we're really excited to keep iterating and improving on this feature for 11.0 and well beyond. So much for SAML, so much for SSO. I want to talk about some core improvements that I'm super excited about. So I was super excited to see WebIDE kind of go open source in 10.7. This really is like a big step forward in our vision to make these contributions like super, super easy and seamless. And the first addition that I wanted to talk about is to be able to show your most recent pipeline details and job traces side by side with your code to make fixing issues really, really easy. I know that right now, it's kind of there's some context switching, and it's a little bit of a challenge to see like where exactly my pipeline failed and where I need to fix it in my code. But now we want to be able to show those side by side. I personally love the WebIDE for those like really small, more straightforward changes. But when that test actually fails, it's still a little bit of a back and forth in order to figure out what went wrong. Now, by showing it all in the same view, you'll see exactly you will present a terminal on the right-hand side of your screen, and you'll be able to see exactly which file and which line any failure occurs. And you can simply like look to the middle of your screen and the file picker on the left-hand side in order to find that, make a change, make a commit, and then fix it. Much easier, much more straightforward. And that's ultimately the goal for the WebIDE, right? We don't want to replace your local editor. We want to lower the contribution bar and like not make it a requirement to open and check out a branch and pull, commit, and push and so forth. We want the WebIDE to do a lot in a single view. And to further that kind of that idea and that vision, we want to be able to present open merge requests that you're assigned to the author for in that same view with the CI status kind of shown in that same view. So, open MRs that you're assigned to or that you've authored, you can simply switch to in that same view. Switch to an open MR, write your code, commit, and then switch without ever leaving the same view in the web IDE. I'm really excited for this one, and I think this is going to supercharge the web IDE view so that you can do a ton of different things in that same view without losing context. So really excited for those changes for the web IDE. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about some features that we've stashed in the overview section of the admin panel. So this is the cohorts and condev index available for all users by default. And if you're not familiar with these features before, these are user cohorts, which gives you some insight about when users join your instance by month and their activity level. And condev index, which is your conversational development index, which shows you some really insightful instance metrics about how many issues, MRs, pipelines, and environments are being created by a user. We think this is really important to kind of give people insight into how their instances how advanced they are on the DevOps lifecycle. We want everyone to be exposed to this information, so we're pulling it out of the admin panel where everyone can view this instance level data. Keep in mind that if privacy is a concern and you want to be able to set this back to being only viewable by admins, you can absolutely do that. But we're excited to kind of to expose this kind of user data and this DevOps information for everyone to kind of benefit from and to kind of to learn from. And lastly, I wanted to talk about we're building LFS object support while importing a project. We didn't do a great job supporting LFS before, and we had some issues when we were cloning a repo locally. But now projects that use Git large file storage, you can import the project, clone them locally, and it'll be totally seamless without a hitch. So, but wait, not lastly, so that we've got actually 11 bug fixes on the way that I forgot to talk about. Don't have time to go into detail for every single one. Super happy to see that, and I'll leave it there for now. So my thanks go to the platform team for all their hard work and tackling all those super exciting efforts. So my thanks to them. Josh, over to you. What's going on in monitoring and distribution?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. That's all really exciting. I can't wait for some of those enhancements, the web IDE, as well as improved FL support. And there's some really exciting stuff there. On the monitoring side, we also have some exciting things that we're working on here in 11.0. The first one is we want to make it easier for you to view sort of the health of your deployments in Kubernetes. We have deploy boards today in GitLab where you can see the status of deployment and you can see how things are either successfully or perhaps not quite so successfully deploying into your cluster. Now, previously the challenge was where if you had a problem or something wasn't coming up online or if things were restarting, you had to then go elsewhere to try and figure out what's going wrong. With 11.0, we want to expose the option to pull the pod logs directly from Kubernetes, from the pod that might be having an issue, and expose them directly into GitLab. Of course, you can also use this if you simply want to check out the logs of a pod running as well that's running healthily, maybe looking at requests coming through or things like that. And so all that will be available and easily accessible, where before you had to either have kubectl installed and connected to the cluster, having access rights and things like that, or diving into the console and loading up kubectl proxy. Using all these third-party tools to try and go ahead and just simply figure out what's going on in that particular pod, and so we're making finding those answers much more easier, much more seamless, and part of your normal workflow. So really excited about that. I know I tend to hop around between different clusters in particular, which can be quite painful. Changing, for example, which cluster you're connected to with your command line tools. We also want to go ahead and start delivering more proactive notifications on the health of the deployments that you have in production or even other environments as well. So we're giving the option now to go ahead and set thresholds where you can trigger alerts. For example, if your error rate is exceeding a certain amount, or for example, if your memory or CPU usage is nearing limits, you can actually set alerts for those and receive proactive notifications directly from GitLab around those events occurring and getting hopefully a heads up and resolving those before they become a problem. And the great thing about this is that you could, previously, for example, with Prometheus alerts, you had to go ahead and manage a configuration file and know some of the syntax and options like that. We have a great simplified UI where you can simply go ahead and you have some simple options to set a threshold, and we take care of all of that configuration work automatically on our side, so you don't have to worry about any of that kind of difficulty and configuration of the actual files. So some nice benefits there for folks using Prometheus, our monitoring features. We also want to go ahead as part of 11.0 and really make our operations feature easier to find and having more of a home for them in the UI. Right now, they're sort of spread across in the environments tab or on a particular environment. And we want to make sure those are easier to find, easier to get to as part of our UI. And so to do that, we're going to go ahead and actually have an operations tab underneath the CI/CD tab on the main left-hand navigation bar. And we'll have our environments tab there. And we'll also have our Kubernetes cluster tab there as the first sort of iteration here in 11.0. And we'll go ahead and be building on this by pulling in the metrics information directly there, and obviously soon pod logs and things like that as well, to make it even easier to discover this is there, but also just easier to access as well without having to dive into a couple workflows deep to access these features. So really excited about that as well, to kind of, again, have more of a home for these operations features. Moving on to distribution, we have some really exciting things here coming out. The main one is we're targeting the launch of our beta release of our cloud native GitLab chart. This is the chart that essentially has a number of enhancements over our current existing Helm chart, where you can have more easily scale horizontally. You don't have to bring an NFS server if you wanted to try and scale it. We also don't require root permissions anymore to make it more easy to run on OpenShift and other platforms that can be a problem, or just simply on infrastructure where you might not want to have root containers, for example. So a huge number of benefits there. Dive in and learn more about that project. But again, we'll have that here in beta in 11.0, and some really exciting enhancements there for running GitLab on Kubernetes. We're also working to improve the build times. This is sort of like a continuous improvement here on the internal side that'll help our workflow. But again, we're sort of investing some time and effort here to really improve the turnaround time of some of our builds. And going forward, we're going to start leveraging this more and more as we have review applications for the GitLab CE and GitLab EE repos and other features that essentially will require sort of more on-demand builds of GitLab. And the current timeline is just tends to be quite long. And so, for example, if you want to have a review application, you probably want it quite soon to when you actually committed your changes and see them live. And having to wait 20, 30 minutes, for example, for a build to run and then get deployed doesn't really feel great. And so, so to make it more easy and to more rapidly iterate and collaborate on features here in GitLab, we want to go ahead and reduce that time for our internal build process here. We're also working on making it easier to, of course, deploy and install GitLab. We've been making enhancements in the past few releases to make it easier to enable HTTPS with the integration with Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt is a great service. It's trusted by most browsers and allows you to programmatically pick up SSL certificates for free, which is fantastic. And obviously, GitLab, of course, is best run with HTTPS, not just from a security standpoint and privacy, but also because you get features like the registry, which function much more cleanly with HTTPS turned on. And so while we have support for the core GitLab service already, we want to expand that to also support features like the registry and Mattermost, which currently don't participate in that automatic SSL feature. So to make it, again, much easier to have a more fully fledged deployment of GitLab with SSL turned on. Moving on down, we're also kind of doing some cleanups and improvements here as well with the 11.0 release. One thing we're doing is we want to simplify the configuration of Mattermost. Right now, there are 3 different ways to configure Mattermost. You have the GitLab configuration file, you have the Mattermost JSON file, and you also have the Mattermost console. And all of these can potentially conflict, in particular the GitLab configuration and the config.json. And so we want to remove that potential for conflict and the potential to lose configuration parameters by simply having all the GitLab settings be passed by environment variables. We won't touch the config file anymore. That will all still stay. And then reducing the number of options that we have available to pass along. And so this will, again, kind of resolve that multiple sources of truth to configuration that currently happens with Mattermost. We've been letting folks know this has been coming for quite some time. And so now we're going ahead and actually doing the transition here in 11.0. We're also working to remove some of the deprecated settings released in 10.0. So we introduced a new way to configure get data dir in 10.0. And we're going to go ahead and remove the deprecated configuration options here in 11.0. And similar to Mattermost configuration, we've also been warning people as they've been upgrading and they're wanting to reconfigure that they were using a duplicate configuration to help, again, make them aware that they need to move off here for 11.0. And then finally, also kind of that continuous integration improvement that we have here is we're working to improve our testing of GitLab HA. And so the goal here is to have a fully automated setup with AHA and ideally also Geo that we can use as part of our automated test suite to more comprehensively test these features than we do so today. And so that's also a really exciting project, and we're continuing to iterate on that here in 11.0. So that's it for the top items here in the release. Again, super exciting. A ton of great core features here with improvements to the web IDE, improvements to the merge request workflow, that's being GA, and also a lot of other great features here for some of the enterprise users with pod logs, alerting, and other options. I think we do have some questions we can get to here. Let's see here on YouTube. I think, Victor, that one might be for you, but to respond to. But if not, if you're offline, it's about group milestones showing up on the managers board.
Yeah, let me, sorry, I have to open it up. Give me a second to open it up to see.
Sure. But other than that, while Victor is pulling up the question there, again, this is a fantastic release. I'm really excited for 11.0 and setting a lot of kind of great trends in the future here with the operations tab. Again, continuing to kind of pull the web IDE into more and more features of GitLab with integration with CI. So really setting some exciting sort of directions for the future here with this major milestone release, as well as some important sort of cleanup and improvements that we had during these major releases as well.
Thanks, Josh. I'll answer that question really quickly from YouTube. Yeah, so we're currently focused on getting group milestones in parity with our project milestones. So I'll share those links in the Google Doc, and folks can access there. And then for the so we're focused on that, and you can look at our direction page, and it shows a bunch of issues there, showing how we're focused on getting group milestones, all the functionality and parity of project milestones. That includes a lot of functionality on the group milestones page. So the request was for getting functionality to see group milestones in the issues dashboard. Oh, okay, yeah. So that is part of that work. So I got that confused. I thought that was somewhere else. So that is upcoming. That is definitely our focus. I don't have it off the top of my head which iteration we'll be working on for that particular request, but I'll make sure I put that in our Google Doc somewhere as a section of questions answered from YouTube.
Awesome. Thanks, Victor. I think that's the last of the questions that I saw. So that's it. We'll wrap up for this best release ever, 11.0. And we'll see everyone again here for 11.1. Thank you very much for attending.